Good day, everyone. It is I, Sir Review. Today, we are going to be talking about a game that had such high hopes when it was originally going to come out. When the news came out about it, a lot of gamers and a lot of fans of Bungie were very excited. But when it finally was released, it was greatly just looked down upon by a lot of gamers, including me. It was just a huge disappointment that I feel the need that I should talk to you guys about it. And that is Destiny. Now, yes, I did buy the game, and I always ask this question during a video game review. Do I regret buying the game? I do not regret buying this game. I actually still play it a lot, and it's actually quite fun. I just think it's very disappointing. So today we are going to be talking about the pros and the cons of this game. And this is like a preparation for Destiny 2, which I have super high hopes for, but I'm also very concerned with. I'm just hoping that, Bungie finally, jumps back from like the disappointments that were in this game, and they actually, and I already think they're getting better. I mean, with the new expansions like the Taken King and Rise of Iron, I mean, they really helped it a lot, and hopefully this new Destiny 2 will just have everything that's needed. But I will be talking about that game sometime later, my expectations for that game. So today we're going to be talking about Destiny, the original one. I'm not going to be getting very deep into the expansions and the Taken King or Rise of Iron, but I am going to be talking about the pros of the game and then the cons of the game. The pros of the game. The graphics are spectacular. It's one of the greatest graphics in any game that I have seen, especially sci-fi and fiction. Every time I'm on a planet, it makes me feel like I'm actually on that planet. It doesn't make me feel like, oh, this is just another, space-like game where you're going to another generic planet. No, each planet has its own unique characteristics. Unlike, No Man's Sky, where almost every planet was generically the same. Another pro in the game is the armor customizations. Now, the weapons customizations weren't as good. It's because the rares and the uncommons, and even some of the rares and the uncommons for the armor, do look slightly similar, but I'll get to that later. The weapons and the armor, like legendaries and exotics, they look very cool. They have a lot of power behind them. They each have their own advantage and disadvantage to each, like to every single characteristic and to every, whether you're being a Titan, a Hunter, or a Warlock, it doesn't really matter. Every single armor has its pros and its cons, just like the game itself. And another pro I have for the game is the multiplayer. The multiplayer is a very, very fun part, although I have to admit it is kind of difficult if you don't know what you're doing. Like, you have to know pretty much exactly what you're doing. You have to be very alert. You have to be quick on your feet. You have to have basically the right kind of weapon to get the job done. Because if you have the wrong weapon, you might know what you're doing, but you might not do much. But the multiplayer levels are fun. You get to have like these cool like once a month trials for like the Iron Banner, where you get to join the Iron Banner for like a week each month to get more armor and get more weapons and to get into the Crucible and fight other players. Another pro I have with this game is the variety in the world itself. Like, the servers aren't the best, but they keep you with the other players for a good amount of time and at least keep you together during a strike or a raid. And that's most of the pros I have about the game. I have several others that I might not dwell into, but I have quite a few cons about the game too. Number one being the story. The story for the original Destiny was just basically garbage. It basically had no story to it whatsoever. When I was playing it, I was actually waiting for the story to come in, unaware that I was already playing it, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea that I was playing the story. I didn't even know, if I was still doing a tutorial. I had no idea. It turns out there was no tutorial, and I was playing the story mode the whole time, and I had no idea. And then expansions 1 and 2 come along, which basically continue the story to the first one, which I doubt that's the thing, because they each have their own, story going on there, but many people say it's a continuation of the first story. But people like me just don't believe that. We just believe it's just another expansion to the game. And don't get me wrong, it has been getting better with the Taken King and Rise of Iron. The Taken King was still had quite a bit to do with the original game, but Rise of Iron. I was talking with my friend the other day. We were discussing how Rise of Iron could almost be its own game in Destiny. It could be its own little sequel. It could have been a sequel even of itself, because it just has a new breed of character. It doesn't have another like a new villain who is in the same kind of villain caption. It doesn't have another Fallen boss or another Hive boss. No, you get a new boss called Siva, which was actually a pretty cool addition to the franchise, especially as a villain, because it has like these cool abilities. And I was just thinking, man, it would have been awesome to have this as a sequel, and the story was just cut short. I mean, that story could have been super long and super good to make it into a sequel, but it never made it. Another con I have about the game is the looting. Now, you can kind of tell right away if you watch the trailer for the second Destiny. They are probably going to fix that problem in the second one, because they just hint at it out of nowhere in the trailer. But in the first one, the looting is cool. Like, it's very good when you're like level 1 all the way up to like level 19. But once you get from level 20 to level 40, that's when it starts to get old and repetitive, and you get too many rares. And here's another problem that I had that I mentioned earlier. All the rares and uncommons for both armor and weapons just look almost exactly the same. Just they needed more variety. The legendaries and the exotics had a lot of variety, and they had a lot of advantages to them and several disadvantages. But they just didn't really put much thought into like the beginners of the game and how they should each get their own cool unique weapon while on their way to becoming, a level 40 character. And that was something I didn't really dwell too much on, because I was mainly focused on how fun the game was for me. It's still a very fun game, even though the story was basically garbage. It was still very, very fun. But another con I just have to have with the game that I certainly hope they fix in the second game is the interactions with other players. I mean, sure, it lets you view their profile and lets you view their guardian and invite them on a fire team to do raids and stuff. But it doesn't let you trade with them. It doesn't let you trade with them. It doesn't let you communicate with them very well. It just doesn't really fit that kind of thing that a fire team should have. A fire team that can actually communicate with each other and share each other's weapons, or give them life. Like, have each person play a specific role in the fire team. That would be pretty cool, instead of just having them all do the same thing, which is running around and shooting. Have them each play their own specific role. Now, the levels are fun, although they are quite repetitive. Just, you bring out your ghost and he scans a door while you have to hold the line and defend your ghost. It's pretty much that same thing in each level. Although they're still kind of fun, because, as you move on in the level, you do get a wider variety of enemies to attack. And here's another pro I have with the game that I want to point out real quick, is how when you're doing patrols, you could do patrols on the planets where you can just like roam around and defeat enemies and work with other players, and you can like do these little side missions to get more experience. That is actually a pretty cool addition to the game. And I like how in the patrols, when you do go to like a place where there are two different kinds of enemies, like there's a fallen enemy and then there's a hive enemy, sometimes like the enemies will will literally fight each other and shoot at each other. Like I went to the Dreadnought, which is a place in the Taken King that's in the rings of Saturn. It's like a giant ship. You go there and there's a crashed Cabal ship that crashed into the dreadnought, and you see Cabal, jumping out of that ship and actually attacking Hive that are in the dreadnought. It's super cool. It's very, very interesting. I just sometimes just like to sit there and watch the enemies fight each other. It's just so funny. Another con that I have with this game, again, it was sort of a pro, but it's also a con of its in even of itself, is the servers. The servers don't really have that big of expanse to it. It's usually just a 6v6 kind of thing in the multiplayer, which is cool. I mean, I can deal with that, but I was hoping to just have a bigger like variety to it. Make it like a 12v12 thing. Make it like have more guardians to it, and make it like an absolute bloodbath, and have it just like an absolute just complete chaos when you're fighting each other. It would be pretty neat to have that in there, and to give more experienced players a bigger challenge to have in there. Because let's be honest, a lot of the very experienced players probably get very tired of fighting the less experienced characters every time they go into the Crucible. Well, anyway, that was my review of Destiny. My final score for it was originally, when the original game came out, I gave it a 5 stars. It was very disappointing, but then when the first 2 expansions came along, I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. And then once Taken King came out, I was like, okay, I gave it a 6 stars. And then once Rise of Iron came out, I was like, okay, this actually gets a 7 stars in my book, because it just got better and better, and hopefully with the sequel coming out, hopefully it will even be better than Rise of Iron. I mean, I just hope so. And I mean, I played the beta. It was really neat. I just hope that the rest of the game is as good as the beta was. Anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. I'm super sorry for not making a video in a while. Hopefully when the new school year starts, I will have less on my plate to do, and actually have more time on the weekends to upload videos if I get the chance. And I'm planning next week to release my expectations video for Destiny 2, because it's almost out, guys. Just under a month left, and it'll be out. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends. Peace out.